In a dairy leadership culture, we don't use a lot of shame and finger pointing, but we do hold ourselves and each other's account.
The microphone always helps. So public comment, public will be provided with an opportunity at this time to address the committees on the non-agenda items and all action items for the joint RPTA and VMR meeting agendas. Up to 3 minutes will be provided per speaker unless the chair allows more at their discretion. A total of 15 minutes for all speakers will be provided. Are there any public comments for today's meeting?
No, ma'am, not at this time.
Thank you. Jessica will now introduce the study session portion of the meeting.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, members of the public. This morning, we have a collaborative study session focused on the Prop 479 Transit Life Cycle Program. The study session is going to be jointly presented by our partners at Maricopa Association of Governments and Valley Metro staff. As you are aware, we're entering a new era of regional transportation funding, which includes the largest source of bus and paratransit funding coming through Valley Metro RPTA, and that's Prop 479. As you know, under Proposition 400, the administration and management of the Transit Life Cycle Program, or TLCP, was a responsibility of Valley Metro RPTA and operated under a jurisdictional equity funding model for the bus program. Valley Metro will continue to work with their city partners to administer, manage, and close out that Prop 400 era TLCP. Relative to Prop 479, RPTA remains the statutory authority and owner of the Public Transportation Fund, and we're still required to account for the PTF money spent throughout Prop 479. Our partners at MAG will now be the administrator of the Prop 479 program. Today, MAG will share their projections for revenue and expenditures for the Transit Life Cycle Program for Prop 479 from 2019, as well as updated projections for FY27. Since the development of our RSTIP, that's our Regional Transportation Plan, in 2019, there have been significant economic and contractual shifts over the last 7 years. Some of those shifts have been related to the pandemic, as well as substantive changes in operating costs, including labor and wage rate adjustments, workforce challenges, contract changes, and escalations, including growth in paratransit demand. We've brought information to this board about economic conditions, challenges delivering service, and system performance since 2022, and the board has taken action to address some of those challenges, such as workforce shortages. I want to note that Valley Metro delivers all rail service, as well as bus service across East Valley, portions of Phoenix, and express bus service across East and West Valleys. And we deliver paratransit service across a patchwork of markets throughout the valley. We also work with our partners at City of Phoenix, who provide bus service to Phoenix, Avondale, Glendale, Goodyear, Peoria, Surprise, the Sun Cities, Tolleson, and Youngtown, and our partner cities that provide PTF-funded ADA paratransit service, including Phoenix, Peoria, and Glendale. Today, the cost figures for service that you see reflect all of these operators. Now I'll pass the conversation to Valley Metro's Chief Financial Officer, Ken Kessler, who will begin by walking through an overview of Valley Metro RPTA revenues and expenditures. Ken.
Thank you, Jessica. Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the current Valley Metro finances. First, starting with our FY26 current year total operating capital budget, the combined agency RPT and VMR together, $589.7 million. And we are funded by a number of funding sources, including the Prop 400 and now going forward, Prop 479 public transportation funds, member city contributions, federal funds, and some Arizona lottery funds that we receive and administer for the county. Now, a breakdown first of the RPTA budget. You can see here on the revenues, $356.6 million total current year budget for operating capital for RPTA. The vast majority of that budget is funded by Prop 400 PTF revenues, as well as member city contributions and federal funds. On the expenditure side for RPTA, the vast majority of our overall operating capital budget consists of bus and demand service operations, as well as a number of other expenditure categories there. Now moving on to the Valley Metro Rail FY26 budget, $233.1 million, funded primarily by federal funds and Proposition 400 in the current fiscal year. Primarily, the large amount of federal funds in Prop 400 in the current year is due to the ongoing capital programs, those major capital projects that are still winding down, finishing up some of those trailing costs for those major projects. On the, you can see on the expenditure side, light rail operations being the biggest part of our overall budget, and rail expansion, as I just kind of alluded to, with those major capital projects still winding down in FY26. So that concludes my overview of the Valley Metro, RPTA and Valley Metro Rail budgets. Next, I'll be turning it over to John Bullen from MAG to take on the next part of the presentation. John.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Board of Directors. Pleased to be here today to join you. I'm John Bullen, the Assistant Executive Director at MAG, also serve as the Chief Transportation Officer. We have been working in close partnership with Valley Metro really since we kicked off the effort to initiate development of the Prop 479, which started early in 2025. So we've been at this for quite a while. When we talk about program management, there's actually 3 life cycle programs as part of both the Prop 400 and Prop 479 programs themselves. However, what we've really talked about at MAG through our committee process of the 3 life cycle programs, the transit program, transit life cycle program is really the one that's changing the most. It represents the largest policy shifts between Proposition 400 and Proposition 479. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one, as Ms. Medford Miller had indicated, management of the program is transitioning to MAG. And then secondly, I think it's fair to characterize our approach in Prop 479 represents a bit of an overhaul from how things were done in Prop 400, and we'll talk a little bit more about that through the series of the presentation. So just to orient you, what you're used to relative to what the 479 program looks like, as Ms. Medford Miller had indicated, really the Prop 400 program is managed as part of this fixed revenue allocation model, if you will. It's a model that really solved the primary challenge that you were dealing with as part of Prop 400, which is the impact of the Great Recession. It provided budget stability, financial stability, certainty, which was really important at the time. However, during plan development, we worked through a series of issues and identified that the model had its challenges. It inherently prioritized or incentivized local decisions. It didn't allow to the region to adapt to changes over time, which is particularly important for such a fast-growing region. And then lastly, it really emphasized one funding source, the half-cent sales tax, despite the multiple funding sources that flow into the model. And so there was a lot of discussion about how we should build the transit program in the future, in particular, how we should take into account how transit is funded, how transit functions here in the region, the role of local funding, role of key regional objectives. And so really we built the new program under the framework of a performance-based formula. So that's really the key cornerstone to the future program. That formula itself still provides for jurisdictions to be able to make local decisions, but it provides incentives to invest scarce resources in the most efficient service it accounts for the role of local funding. And then as Armento will talk about too, there are still elements of the bus formula program that allow for opportunities to expand, try new service, and grow the market. So this was really a major focal point of plan development activities. You can see on the screen here the different components that make up the Prop 479 program. Today's presentation will focus on the top row, which is really the bus operating component. So you can see here, and with that, I will turn it over to Armenta, who is the Transportation Policy and Initiatives Manager at MAG. She has been the one leading this effort.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you so much for having us here today. As John mentioned, I'm briefly going to touch on the nuances related to the changes in the new 479 framework. So first, when you look at the total funding available for the bus operations components, the way that funding really gets broken down is first we have that total pot of revenues, and then next we account for what you can think of as the cost commitments really shown there in the middle. So the base allocation, ADA, express service, regional services support, and a small amount that acts as the local match for bus capital needs such as fleet purchases. And then once that's been accounted for, the balance of that funding that remains then becomes the total amount available for the formula pot or that performance-based piece that John was just mentioning earlier. So I'll briefly touch on each of these elements and the framework that's already been set in place that helps guide how these amounts are calculated. So first, when we consider the bus operating assistance, really that's the total amount that agencies get to be able to use on their local fixed route service. It's broken down into 3 tiers, mainly 2 tiers, the third being a small subset of the second, and each of them serve their own purpose, but together is the total amount available to agencies for fixed route service. So the first tier, the base allocation, is intended to be a funding floor or sort of the minimum amount guaranteed to agencies each year. The way that's calculated is that it's based off of the existing service that's funded through Prop 400 at the end of Prop 400, so that it allows or was intended to allow for agencies to be able to continue that service as we transition to the new 479 framework. The total existing service was based off of what was published in the 2019 TLCP. That was the latest approved program at the time of the plan development. And so really that is basically, once it gets calculated and approved, it remains fixed for the entire 20 years except for annual inflationary adjustments. The second tier, the formula pot, which is where the balance of funding that's left over goes into, it serves the same purpose as the base allocation in that combined with the base allocation, that total amount is available to agencies to use on any fixed route service. But the way it gets calculated is a little bit different. Basically, the total pot that's available every 2 years gets divided up to jurisdictions based on their proportional share of transit service performance. So specifically, their proportion of ridership and revenue miles in relation to the total system-wide then becomes that percentage of that total formula pot the agencies will receive. This is the element that John was mentioning that is intended to be flexible as it's revisited every 2 years to be able to adjust total funding based on changing needs over the 20 years. And in addition, looking at the performance factors is intended to incentivize investment in those productive routes. And then really that last tier, the seed funding is an element or a set aside of the formula funding pot, and that amount itself is restricted to be used on new or emerging seed markets, if you will, really intended to help expand the existing regional transit network. Before I get into details on that, first I'll touch on also there's a provision set aside for funding for circulator service. Again, that's another subset of that total formula pot, about 10% of that pot, that then is able to be used on circulator service, but ultimately gets restricted to 30% of the operating cost for circulator service.
Yes,
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question before we move on from the pyramid. Is there a consensus between Valley Metro and MAG on why there's such a sharp decrease in the projection for the formula funding?
Members of the board, Madam Chair, Councilmember Tomachoff, there is, and in fact, as soon as I get through these next 3 slides, we're going to dive into that.
My
deeper.
apologies. I'm seeing this for the first time right now because it was mailed to us 1 hour before this meeting convened. And I was in another meeting and then in transit. So I apologize, but I don't think anybody has seen this until right now. So I apologize.
you don't need to apologize for that.
Madam Chair, members of the board, so just a point of clarification, we don't typically release the study session slides in advance. In fact, we were working with MAG up until last evening on them. We did provide hard copy and digital copy of the study session slides today. We have many members who are participating electronically, and we want everybody to be able to follow along. But just as with, I think, MAG's committees as well, the presentations are typically delivered during the meetings.
Okay.
With that
Councilmember
said,
Pastor?
can I have a copy of that, please? I do not have one.
Councilmember Pastor?
Yes, I would just like to review that pyramid once again. So there's seed money for the 4-year emerging market pilot funding program. So if there's a city that has an emergent, sorry, I can't speak, a pilot funding program, we could apply for it.
That's correct.
Yeah. And-
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So I will
Oh,
go into that in detail, but this is essentially the slide that speaks.
So you're going to go into detail each one of these pyramids?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, perfect. And maybe you'll answer my question. I'll be quiet.
Okay. So just to continue on, of that formula pot, there's a set aside, that's the provision for circulator operations. It's 10% of the formula funds, and it's restricted to be able to use on up to 30% of the cost of a circulator route. If the total funding requested is more than the funding available, that gets allocated based on the same performance criteria mentioned as part of the formula program. And then just briefly touching on the seed funding, or the funding that's also set aside for new or emerging markets. Again, that's another 10% set aside of that total formula pot. And it's like Councilmember Pastor mentioned, intended to be to pilot new routes over a 4-year period. There are local match requirements, as you can see here on the slide, that change with every year of the pilot. And then once the pilot is completed, that route, if it continues, becomes eligible for inclusion in the calculation of each agency's overall formula performance.
There's a comment or
Thank you.
question?
Thank you, Madam Chair Armenta, Madam CEO, and also Councilmember Tomachoff. I do want to apologize. I thought this was a presentation I saw yesterday. I did not see this exact presentation. I did not have this before me this moment, so I just wanted to roll back to you. My bad.
Councilmember Tomachoff?
Yeah, just to point out though, that the MAG presentation with different charts, but it actually shows real dollars, points out that there's 0 funding for seed funding. So just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Councilmember Tomachoff, you're correct. So that total formula pot that you see in the chart that we'll go over shortly, that's the total amount available for formula and seed and circulator. So of the, I think you're looking at the 4.5 million that we're reflecting estimated in fiscal 27, 10% of that would be available for the seed or emerging markets. And then another 10% of that would be set aside for the circulator provision. So it's the formula pot is kind of the overarching pot, if you will.
So, I mean, that basically lowers it down to about 3.5 million. Excellent, thank you.
And then I'm just briefly going to touch on the last element, which is part of the regional services components with Express Bus and regional services support. Those costs are fully covered under the 479 transit program. And with ADA service, ADA paratransit service, it's also fully covered, but it is restricted to just the service that meets the strict federal criteria of ADA paratransit service. So you can see that listed here on the screen in front of you. Essentially that the trips must be within a 3/4 mile of a fixed route, and the passengers are required to be ADA certified. And with that, I will pass it on to Michael to go over the remaining portion of the presentation.
Madam Chair, got a question down here. Yeah, I wanted to, I guess I'm thinking, is there a way that you can give it to us in the numbers? Because it sounds like there's a dollar amount associated with the 479. Providing us percentages of how the formula is derived from, this kind of makes it a little bit more challenging to follow along what we're doing. And then also I was kind of thinking that in terms of what dollars have been contributed from the actual passing of Prop 479, or what our individual cities are responsible for, there's no way for us to kind of engage that. And then the last thing I was thinking about was the seed money for markets. Like we've been talking about for a long time, like extending out to the West Valley, having those additional services going west, and then I think there's a constant conversation about how far east do you want to go? Because you kind of stop right at the southern part of Chandler. You don't really go too far. You don't go into Gilbert that I'm aware of, or Queen Creek or whatever. But there's been expressed interest in that, and also going down towards Tucson, which I may say that may be it might have to be a joint county conversation with Pinal. But I do think that we need to have, like, in terms of these dollars, are you saying that there's not enough money to do what this regional board is supposed to do? Is that something that we're going to be going back out to the taxpayer and saying, hey, we don't have enough money? What are we saying here, and how are we using what we have?
Madam Chair, members of the board, so I'll jump in and sort of address some of those questions at a high level. Mr. Eshelman will go over the finances, and so he'll be able to provide you specific numbers to help orient that. I will tell you sort of some of the conversations that occurred during plan development. What we heard is that there was a lot of demand for bus transit. So the one of the themes that we heard overall is the importance of transit, desire for better transit, desire for more transit, desire for expanded transit. And so when we put the plan together, that was a big focal point. We nearly doubled the total amount of funding available for bus operations as part of the RSTIP. However, as Michael will work through, a lot of the market challenges we've seen have chipped away at that funding that we had identified to be able to grow that to the point where it's really focused on existing service levels. The formula pot, as Michael will show, has been greatly reduced. But the seed funding, the emerging market funding, was really intended to address that last point you made, which is there's a lot of demand to expand transit out. There's a lot of desire to test new markets, recognizing that you know, the current limits of our transit doesn't necessarily meet the demand. And so the formula or the emerging market program, the seed program, was a way to do that, where the region would pick up a higher share in the beginning. It would taper off over time, give us a 4-year performance period to really test the viability of the service. And then a decision could be made: do we want to continue to invest in that service, or do we need to pivot and go elsewhere? So that was really the intent of the emerging market program. But I think a lot of the numbers and the financial information that you all are seeking, Michael will work through.
I guess, and I guess my other thing is that was my only other question concerning that was the formula. A part of the formula conversation was about how it's derived from a density and a share perspective. For instance, if you look at how Phoenix density or Tempe's density in terms of bus route may be a little bit less than the southern part of Chandler,
Sure.
which has less density, but we're still growing in that area. And so what I'm looking at is the derived formula that we coming up with, how we're going to proportionally put it to market. And I think there may be a further conversation about that derived formula, because there's no way Chandler is competing with Phoenix density while trying to attempt to deal with Peoria's density. We have two different types of formula models that will have to take place. So I'm just kind of thinking along those lines as well.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board, that certainly was a big discussion during plan development. How do we want to invest the scarce resources? Where do they best go? I will note that Phoenix actually doesn't participate, is not eligible as part of the formula program. So that was one of the provisions that's put in place. Given the amount of local investment that they have in transit, their priorities were elsewhere. And so it's really the balance of the region. The funding floor was really intended to provide that continuity, that stability. And then the performance-based formula builds in this incentive for, it enables agencies still to make those choices about where they want to invest the funding. But concentrating it in the most productive service yields more regional funding. So there's some built-in incentives with that. I will note that when we put the plan together, because we almost doubled the amount of bus operations funding, there was a substantial amount of funding available for agencies. I know a lot of agencies were counting on that additional funding to either offset some of their local investments that they made, or were sitting there ready to invest in additional routes or more frequency on certain routes. And so that's certainly a challenge that we're going to have to work through looking forward.
I have another question. Councilmember Pastor, you
Go
want to
ahead,
ask?
go ahead.
No, I mean, I was,
Oh, go ahead.
I meant you had a question.
No, I
You're good?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Thomas?
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that I think, I understand that the intent was not to, in the negotiation for Prop 479 and how the buckets of money were going to be divided up, was not to, and I agree, we should be doing emerging markets and doing pilot programs, but I don't believe the intent was for that to be at the expense of high-performing existing routes. And that the issue for local dollars was that those local dollars were committed to arterial life cycle programs. So the commitments have been made. Just wanted to point that out, though, that's what the issue is it's not that the cities were intending to put that money in another pot. That money was intended to go into the Prop 479, but in a different bucket of money, the arterial life cycle program. So that's what the issue is, at least for, I think, some of us sitting up here, is that we're very stunned by this information. Thank you.
Councilmember Pastor?
Yeah, I think we need to add some clarity to this. You speak about, you met with people in plan development. Who are those people? Are you talking MAG members? Who are you speaking about when they made this plan? I just need clarity.
Yeah, sure. Madam Chair, members of the Board of Directors, good question. Ultimately, MAG Regional Council were the decision makers. We worked through the Transportation Policy Committee, who was the statutory board put in charge of developing the plan. But there was significant public engagement as part of plan development. It was a 4-year-long process. A lot of engagement, interactions. We can provide more information on that, but ultimately, Transportation Policy Committee and MAG Regional Council were the decision makers.
And any other questions? All right, go ahead.
All right, thank you, John. Chair, members of the board, I'm Michael Eshelman, Deputy Chief of Service Planning at Valley Metro. We're going to move on now to how the new Prop 479 TLCP program will work and what the funding picture will look like. And I think hopefully we can answer some of these really important questions. So let's begin with the largest funding bucket within the program, the base allocation for bus service. The original Regional Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Investment Plan, what I'll call the RSTIP from here on out, forecast that there would be $68 million in bus expenditures when accounting for inflation. But based on recent factors that I will go into, the number has climbed to 86 million, which outstrips the current funding estimate. This updated figure was developed by This updated figure was developed by MAG as follows. The fiscal year 25 regionally funded mileage was multiplied by the actual contract rates for the same year. The fair revenue number from the previous year was then subtracted from that figure to determine the base allocation figure, which is then updated annually based on the consumer price index. While accounting for inflation explains a portion of the increase in estimated bus operating costs, there are several other key factors to discuss as well as context for those factors. The original fare box recovery ratio estimated for the calculation was around 12%, and in the ensuing years, there's been a decrease in ridership due to the pandemic, as well as the base fare that has not changed since 2013. With a lower fare box recovery figure, there's a larger chunk of bus service that must be funded with the base allocation. In addition, contract rates have increased as much as 42% in the years since the original RSTIP. This is due to several factors, but key among them is the very nature of a long-term contract, which locks in rates that hew close to the base year, but then are subject to a significant rate increase once the contract is up, as the rates will snap up to where the market had moved while the contract was locked in. In addition, there was a substantial increase in labor costs coming out of the pandemic. These rates weren't without benefits, though, as the new East Valley bus contract resulted in very real improvements in reliability and service quality. On-time performance has improved from the mid 70% range to the mid 80% range. Missed trips have also dropped to less than 1/3 of what they were with the old contract. To put these cost increases in context, the next several slides will compare the region's experience with increasing costs to those of the nation and other peer regions. This chart shows two lines. The top line shows growth in transit operating costs since 2010 indexed to 1, meaning the 1.62 number on the far right of the top line is 62% higher than the national agencies were spending on operating costs in 2010. That same figure for Phoenix Regional Transit costs rose 33%, about half the national rate. I can personally attest to how accurate this number is and feels coming from the Bay Area. Because our cost per hour figure at my agency was about $200 in 2015 and about $300 last year. That change alone gave me significant experience in crafting solutions for ensuring we provided the maximum level of service to our constituents under very real budget pressure. Moving on to how we compare to some of our peers. Our cost per mile figure is about $11 or 65% of the average of these peer agencies. As a region, we do a great job of providing service as cost effectively as possible. And once again, this figure includes all of the agencies that operate service within the regions, not just Valley Metro. To put a finer point on the peer comparison, the MAG region only allocates $74 per resident, which is about 27% of the average funding per capita for our peer regions. While operating costs for transit have risen, a key contributor to the pressure on the formula funding pot lies in part with the overall low level of transit funding in the region. The second largest bucket within the base allocation is ADA services. The RSTIP initially forecast about $40 million in costs in 2020 dollars, or about $43.5 million in 2027 dollars, accounting for inflation. However, the most recent update revealed costs of $56 million, which places further pressure on the formula account that serves as the backstop for costs that exceed the base allocation, as well as for service improvements above the base allocation. The reasons for this increase in the ADA bucket, which includes paratransit, dial-a-ride, and ride choice services, are varied but boil down to an increase in trips in general and the fact that those trips tend to be longer as the region has grown. To be clear, demand response services respond to demand, which is to say that more people ride these services, they will cost more. And as I mentioned before, fare, the base fare has not increased alongside these increasing costs and trip counts. Digging into these issues, we've identified some opportunities for improvements around pricing and brokering trips, which is the process of matching riders with services that I will go into in a minute. The final key bucket of expenditures I want to go through is the regional support services. While the overall size of this item is smaller than ADA or bus operations, the change since 2020 was significant, so we wanted to understand it better. What we discovered was that leaving aside inflation and labor cost increases, the regional support services bucket grew in large part due to newer expanded programs that have been moved into the regional support services item. Taken together, Fare Administration, Mobility Center, and Regional Call Center comprise almost $14 million a year. Now that we've gone through the issues we're facing, which is that increasing costs have resulted in an estimated formula pot of only about 4.5 million instead of the forecast 47 million for Prop 479, let's talk about how we're going to go about making that formula pot bigger. The goals for identifying solutions for this issue are threefold. We want to maintain the fiscal year 2027 stability and minimize impacts on local budgets, preserve long-term health of the regional program, and maintain alignment with the RSTIP framework. For MAG, this means the following in terms of implementation of Prop 479. For bus operations in fiscal year 2027, ongoing regionally supported services will be fully funded, including any costs above the base and formula. This means no service reductions were required in that fiscal year. For ADA services in fiscal year 2027, the strict FTA paratransit coverage area and eligibility rules that John mentioned earlier will go into effect on July 1, 2026 to allow time to implement ADA program updates ahead of 2028 without pressure on local budgets. For fiscal year 2028 TLCP, the full Prop 479 suite of policies will be implemented consistent with the RSTIP, providing room for adjustments based on feedback through the MAG committee process. I want to talk through what we're looking at in terms of how we can operate our service better. For fixed route bus service, including local, express, and circulators, we focus on the bus network redesign as the most effective means of improving ridership, increasing fare revenue, and managing the cost of operating service. By reworking where the routes go and how often they run, we can get more people on the bus, which will translate to more fare revenue, thus increasing the funding available for the base allocation as well as the formula pot. In addition, the bus network redesign represents a real opportunity to design the routes themselves so we can operate them more efficiently. This means matching frequencies to round trip time so every bus in service is being used effectively. In addition, we're bringing to the board today an item requesting contract authority to review and improve the underlying run times across the system to improve reliability and operate the service more efficiently. An effort we believe can yield significant savings while operating the same level of service. We'll work closely with our partners to identify efficiencies that apply to all fixed route services, including those operated in the central and west, including those in the central and west valleys operated by Phoenix. With respect to demand response services, we identified several real opportunities to improve how we deliver it. We believe there's an opportunity to combine or regionalize demand response services, but we understand that's a longer term discussion. In the short to medium term, there's an opportunity to evaluate whether we can centralize the brokerage services so that a single broker can assign trips regardless of who is operating that service. In the near term, Valley Metro is evaluating the feasibility of insourcing the brokerage for our own services and providing a single point where the broker can assign a customer to either a paratransit or a ride choice service, depending on their specific needs. Right now, if a customer calls for paratransit, they will get that service even though ride choice may be a better, cheaper option. And let's go briefly over some policy tools we can explore that could yield improvements to the formula funding pot.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Yeah, before we move on from finances, I just have a quick question. So when was it realized that there was this basically financial cliff for the formula funding? How long have we known about that?
Madam Chair, members of the board, so we initiated development of the TLCP back in March. We gave our first presentation to the MAG Policy Committee in March 2025, followed that up in summer of 2025 by really talking through some of the increases on focusing on the bus operations component. At the time, we knew that there were challenges. We articulated some of the challenges that Michael went over in terms of significant escalation in contract rates, some of the labor costs. I think Michael did a good job of talking about how we relate to peer agencies. So we presented that information in summer of 2025, but we were still waiting on the full financial picture because as Armenta had shown, there's a formula and there's all these different discrete pieces. We didn't have the final discrete piece, which is the ADA piece, until late 2025, so about midway through the month in December. So we didn't know how small the formula pot was until December. And so really it's the culmination of about a year's worth of work to understand where costs are at, what our projections are. So from a MAG 479 looking forward perspective, we didn't know until about mid-December what the overall financial shape of the program would be in.
Thank you. I just could ask a quick follow-up. Based on your slide 18, the bus operating cost, so the increase is about 20% essentially, right? I mean, that's from $1.33 a mile to $1.62 a mile. That
No, so actually so the national increase, I'm still on, okay. Madam Chair.
This is national, this isn't local.
So the 62% increase is how much national operating costs have increased, and the 33% increase is how much our region has increased. So we've only increased at half the rate of the nation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
All right.
Chair, I got a question down here.
Okay.
Yeah, just, I guess, so with knowing that we're in a $43 million shortfall in terms of the formula is concerned, is the formula still accurate?
Members of the board, Madam Chair, I would say a lot of the discussion at MAG, so we just finished presenting our first round of the policy committees, is really focusing on how do we rebuild the formula pot. And so we initiated that discussion. I think Michael has articulated some operational strategies that will certainly be conversations down here. It's going to require a solution, continued joint partnership between MAG and Valley Metro to figure out the solution. We don't know what it is yet, but we really started that conversation for how do we rebuild the formula pot and what sort of trade-offs do we want to entertain to do so.
Yeah, one last question. So today's formula that we're talking about inevitably could be changed because today's formula doesn't look like it's going to solve tomorrow's problems, which is the shortfall. So the formula that was just recently went over is going to be potentially changed, because if we stay within that formula metrics, then there will probably need to be a change in how we're spreading out the dollars, I guess.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board, I think it's fair to say if we change nothing, the formula pot will continue to be small for the entire 20 years, which goes against the intent of the RSTIP and all these different elements that we've talked about in terms of responding, reacting to the future. How do we incentivize productive service levels? How do we continue to meet the needs of an emerging region? And so that's really the challenge that we heard from Transportation Policy Committee and Management Committee is how do we build that formula up to make sure that we're consistent with what the intent of the program is?
Thank you.
Any other questions on this? Okay, Michael, do you want to continue?
If I may just add something really quick to follow up on John. As Michael noted, the approach for fiscal 27 is to make sure that all the agencies remain whole and they are able to continue funding existing service without additional burden on local budgets. And the intent of that is to allow time for us to work through these potential policy changes, what the new formula program, for example, may look like, but none of that would take effect until fiscal 2028. So we have that 1 year sort of transition where we're making sure that local service is sort of stabilized to allow for us to sort of think through some of these strategies presented.
Well, and I would like to be,
Go ahead.
I would like to be involved earlier in the process. I mean, for a whole year to go by and you guys didn't even talk to us, that's unacceptable. And we're supposed to be partners, and that didn't happen. So I'm not happy at all with us waiting till this month to have the presentation. And I have a question.
Actually, it wasn't a question, it was gonna be the same question there is, I'm not comfortable waiting a year for them to do their research to come back to us to tell us that this doesn't work. We need to be in touch points all down this process, letting us know where we're at, because we have to make decisions up here going forward. And without the information you have, we can't make those decisions.
Zach, you're just tying our hands. Councilmember White?
Madam Chair, Board, Mag, Michael, I think this is difficult because the key linchpin here was December is when Mag had that full realization. That's what I'm hearing. And so we've got to put some type of buffer in place. And we're already in, we're wrapping up fiscal 26, we're starting fiscal 27. So for fiscal 27, what I'm hearing you say, please correct me, I've been wrong before, is that we'll keep everything the way it is right now. What my colleagues are saying is maybe we need to move and change as we're going. Is it possible to only do maybe the first half of fiscal 27 and then make adjustments then? Because waiting longer might put us behind the 8 ball. And I know that this is a transition period. We're moving stewardship from in-house to our county partners. So we are all a member of both sets of organizations here at the table. And I think we need to be able to be more agile and innovative. Expenses are of the essence, and we're not getting more money, wasting time. Some folks might interpret that.
Madam Chair, members of the board, so just to add a couple of different elements too. So had the first inclination of the overall financial picture in December. We were still working on confirming that into January. We did not present this information to the MAG boards until February, at which point we are here concurrent pretty much to when the MAG boards are hearing this information. So just want to provide that assurance too. Armenta had mentioned too, sort of the approach to 27 is to infuse additional funding, one-time funding into the bus operations to really protect local budgets, to provide an opportunity to work through solutions. That doesn't mean that there aren't going to be active ongoing conversations for the next year, because there's going to have to be active ongoing conversations. These are not solutions we can come up with overnight. These are not easy solutions. And it will take continued partnership and continued discussion to figure out what exactly we want to do.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chair.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Oh, Odie, go ahead.
So I guess I'm just gonna collectively agree with my colleagues, and I would just add this element. It puts our CEO in a very difficult, CEO and staff in a difficult situation. You probably understand it just like she's gonna understand it. When it's time for us to look at the projected budget, the forecasted budget for the following year, that is gonna put us in a situation, because that puts us in an unstable balance. And so I'm just only agreeing with my colleagues, but I would add that this is the thinking parameters, which is we don't have a lot of time to make decisions. But the call out from March to December, from December to now meeting with the boards to really bring it to a higher level of understanding. I think there are some things that we're going to have to look at, but I will say this is that that partnership, maybe we need to reconsider how we move in that process. If it's every other month, there's an update to our CEO, because we hold our CEO accountable to what she's providing us. If you guys don't get it to her, then we don't know, and then our chair doesn't know, and then all the board members doesn't know. So it's a trickle down effect. So I just hope that we understand that movement is a multi-play, because now I think about the city of Chandler, my 300,000 people, and everyone is thinking about their community. So let's just try to, however that needs to be, whatever that needs to work, however it needs to work succinctly, definitely want to be a good partner in that process. Thanks, Chair.
You're welcome. Councilmember Tomashop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to kind of tag on to what Councilmember Harris, there's a lot of moving parts. I mean, we've got MAG, we've got the committees at MAG, we've got Valley Metro, we've got the board, we've got the managers, we've got RTAG, and each one of us also represents a municipal partner. So there's a lot of dominoes that start tipping over when there's a lack of communication. And I think the point we're trying to make is that the more communication, the better, the more well prepared we can be. We don't want animosity among we're all trying to figure out how this is gonna work. I understand that. This is all brand new to MAG, to Valley Metro, to our cities. It's new for everyone. But the more communication and the more frequent communication, I think the fewer obstacles we're gonna have as we go forward. So I think that's what my colleagues are asking for, is that we want more frequent, better communication so that, and I appreciate the Band-Aid. I mean, it's so far down in the budget process for my city to just try to figure out how to fund fixed route bus routes. Finding this out now, and I know apparently MAG and Valley Metro found out about this in December, but we didn't know until a week ago. I mean, the budget's already in the oven in a lot of our cities. So I think what we're asking for is just please, let's communicate. Thank you.
Councilmember McKellen?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would concur with everyone. As you were speaking, I just sent a note to our transportation person, said, who is on your committees? That is a communication that's really important. If the members of the committees that you're discussing, if we don't know who they are, it's not going to help our individual cities. So that's a communication, and they may not be giving us the information thinking it's not as important to our individual, I don't know, representation. I'm concerned with the communication and the amount of committees. And like Councilman Tomilchov said, we're trying really hard. This is new for all of us and we get it. And not to attack you the second you come to be, for us to be a team, but we've been down a road before in Valley Metro, and we know where we need to be and how it needs to run. And so over communicating is best. So I would even suggest whoever you've met with already, letting them know, please contact your individual municipal board members, because we're making decisions based on information we don't have yet.
Exactly.
And that's a little wonky. Thank you.
It's like we've been on the bench and we should have been in the game a long time ago, like a year ago. And that is unacceptable. Councilmember White?
Madam Chair, MAG, Valley Metro, I think myself and Councilmember Edwards are, full disclosure, we sit on MAG's Transportation Policy Committee. So some of your representation is amongst you. I want to thank my mayor, Mike Pineda, City of Avondale. He makes me abreast of what goes on in MAG, as well as my city manager, Ron Corbin, shares with me what's going on in the management committee. I have staff here, probably two people who I get on their nerves the most. So I get over communicated to, but I require that and I request that because I'm not of service to anybody. But the financials are what they are. The market is what it is. And we have to operate with now dollars. And I share this with everybody anywhere I go. We cannot not have now dollars. So that's why I don't want us to wait the year. I think that's the final thing. And I think that's our sentiment. We don't have a year in the budget. And we definitely need to come back much sooner and maybe maneuver and massage our local budgets, because some of us we don't have a voter approved initiative in Avondale with a tax, but we do fund that out of our budget. Our We Ride portion, we fund that. So we are gonna have to look at everything as all of us tighten our belts across the way. But this has got to be more of a symbiotic relationship, and I think that's what we're asking for as well, Madam Chair.
Yes, I agree.
I may, Madam Chair, we will follow up with the boards. How about this with list of membership, because we have so many staff committees. We have within Valley Metro, we've got a financial working group, a service planning working group. Then of course we have the regional transit advisory group, RTAG. Then we have the transportation managers and rail managers. So we'll share that information with you. We'll also work with our partners at MAG so that you have information on committee membership for those committees of electeds and staff that MAG operates. And I do want to reinforce, as John and Armenta have mentioned, we've been working hand in glove really since 2025 to update the transit life cycle program for 479. A lot happened though between 2019 and the development of the original RSTIP and 2025. This was the period when we were often leading the nation, unfortunately, in inflation. So we were faced with a lot of costs that impact not just the transit portion of the life cycle, but also the freeway, the arterials portion, and I'm sure some of your city budgets as well. So I hear you. It feels like we are playing catch up. I'll come back on timing after Michael reviews policy tools that we've got already underway that we've been talking about in this forum, things like the bus network redesign. And I want to explicitly make the connection between that ongoing work and what we're talking about here, trying to deliver more productive service, recover more revenue.
Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I actually only have one real slide left. Policy tools. So with respect to fares, we believe there's a real opportunity to evaluate the current fare structure and pricing to determine how fares would play a role in the regional funding mix. With respect to contracting, the Valley Metro Board Ad Hoc Committee on Procurement play a key role in identifying and vetting opportunities for finding more efficient ways to support and deliver services. We can also look at where it makes sense to streamline or combine contracts to take advantage of economies of scale. Finally, we should leverage grants to fund services that would be eligible for formula, circulator, and seed funding. We could also explore with our cities how to translate capital grants into opportunities to improve average vehicle speed. In transit, time is money, so the less time a bus spends sitting at lights or in traffic, the more service you can provide. Improvements such as signal priority, queue jumps, and others, as well as boarding policy strategies such as all-door boarding can keep buses moving. And finally, thank you for the opportunity to discuss this important program, and we'd like to continue the discussion.
If I may, Madam Chair, members of the board, I'd like to give timeline. Michael, if you want to go back to that slide, I'd like to put a little meat on these bones here. So with respect to prior slide, which was bus network design, this is work that's underway. You're actually in the RPTA meeting, going to see a presentation from Michael on this. We are working toward a spring 2027 implementation date for a redesigned bus network. And that's the entire regional network, including bus service that's operated by other providers like City of Phoenix. We're working hand in glove with those partners. The impetus for that work is delivering more productive, performative service. That's in advance of the FY28 kind of reset date. On fares, we've been talking about fare policy and administration. We've got an item coming to this board later this spring to finalize that policy. In fall, we'll need to begin having a conversation about actual fare structure and pricing. We haven't updated our base fare. That's the one ride ticket since 2013. And as operating costs grow, if your revenue doesn't grow along with it, then that fare box recovery ratio, the percentage of revenue we're recovering from that passenger as a percentage of operating costs, actually declines. So this is something we're going to have to take up. With respect to contracting, Michael mentioned, especially on the paratransit side, strategies like insourcing brokering so that we've got more control over what type of service is delivered, whether that's ride choice or ADA paratransit, in addition to that 3/4 mile boundary limitation that's in Prop 479. We're looking at these for strategies to enhance our service productivity. I don't want to say bring down our paratransit costs, but to try to contain its growth, because remember with paratransit, with every new boarding, it's demand responsive, that's a new ride or a rider. And then more long-term, we should have conversations about streamlining our many different contracts across the valley. This isn't something that we're going to address in FY27, but it's a conversation worth having as we seek to try to bring stability and cost containment over time to service delivery.
Thank
you for allowing me, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so is it possible can you go back to that slide? So is it possible, CEO through Ken, is it possible that you can show us what that looks like from a numbers perspective? Because I know the last time we did our last meeting, we was presenting marketing in different aspects of what that looks like. I would like to see, in terms of contracting, what that looks like if we go in-house versus out-house. If we can bring some of those contracts in-house, what would that look like? If we can look at what that cost sharing could be, and then just looking at contracting as a whole from a perspective of a number perspective, if we had the ability to bring it in-house, what would that look like? What would the savings be? so we can continue on, and probably even with some of the grants and stuff like that. Is that in-house? What does that look like if it's certain things that are in-house? I know last meeting we had a contract that was coming forward about hiring, hiring another executive, and I guess there was to look inside versus allocating dollars to go outside. So I just kind of want to see if there's a way we can do that through a chart or a number that we can see the difference.
So for each of these strategies, each one is a discrete project. The bus network redesign, evaluating whether to insource paratransit dispatch. That's a discrete project. These things will take time, so we are in no way positioned to come back in next board meeting or next quarter and say, here's all of the savings that we think we can find. In terms of short-term cost savings, what we're looking at right now, even in the context of the FY27 draft budget, is strategies for reducing that regional services bucket. We've got brand new contracts that we own transferred from City of Phoenix, for example, for passenger revenue collection. And we're looking at those and thinking about defining better ways to deliver those services, perhaps combining them with our existing customer service functions. So those are underway, but it takes time for us to evaluate this and come back and say, here's what we think we can give you, because the last thing I want to do is to overpromise and underdeliver on any cost savings, because that's going to find us, again, falling short on revenues. In terms of competitive grant capture, that's not about insourcing or outsourcing. That is the work that we've been doing and we've really doubled down on in the last few years and have been pretty successful at attracting discretionary funding, namely federal discretionary funding to the system. Those are awards like our lower no emissions bus awards. We just got a notification for $18 million that offsets federal funding that would have that can now be spent on different purposes. In the next full meeting, I'm going to give you an update on a build grant that we're pursuing that will help us with speed, reliability, and safety on the rail system side. So that's the bringing more money in. So there are opportunities to spend less and deliver, same or similar product. And then there are also opportunities to bring money outside the region into Valley Metro. So this is going to be an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, and it sounds like we've waited 13 years to raise the fares. That needs to be evaluated on a year by year.
Yeah, so the
basis,
fair
not 13
policy
years later.
that the board will consider, this board has never adopted a fair policy in our history that says we'll come back every X number of years. We will evaluate passenger fares and have that conversation. So this is this discussion we've been having iteratively, and we've got feedback last month, most recently. And so we'll be coming back this spring to finalize that fair policy. And then on top of that, coming back to have a conversation about the actual pricing.
I'd like to put that on the agenda for next month, the fair policy.
It is on the agenda. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
great.
you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. You bet. Councilmember Tom.
Thank you. And thank you, Mag, for the presentation. I appreciate it. And I mean, this is essentially kind of a forced marriage. I mean, we are now joined. And I mean, we want to have a productive relationship. I mean, we just met each other basically. This is new. So I understand so I appreciate the information. I know I say weird things, but that's essentially, that's exactly what this is. I mean, the legislature decided this is how it was going to work. And so you're learning how Valley Metro operates. We're learning how MAG operates. We're trying to figure out how we can best work together. So there's a lot of moving pieces. I do have a couple questions. The formula funding issue. I mean, is the 91% decrease, is that fully analyzed? And that's, or is there, I mean, are we still looking at that to see? I mean, I understand that there's opportunity for savings and increased revenues, but is that that number is what it is?
Madam Chair, members of the board, great question. So I think how we've sort of framed this at MAG is that the challenge facing us is that we're essentially going through a program rebalance at the same time we're building the program. So to make a complex issue even more complex almost, which presents another layer of challenge. The direction we've heard from our policy committees is that there's a lot of concern. I'd say the concern is pretty much universal about the diminishment of the formula program. The direction we've heard is that We need to continue to recognize or align with the intent of the RSTEP, the cornerstone of which is this performance-based formula, and we need to figure out a way how to increase that formula. And so we're going to have a series of policy discussions. I think Valley Metro has been a great partner in that. Many of what Michael had laid out, these are discussions that some of the operational strategies are going to be driven here by Valley Metro and what we can do. That will certainly be a component of it, but certainly heard the need to increase that formula allocation. We'll have to weigh how we do that. It's going to have to come by working through some cost containment strategies on ADA to figure out how we can plateau those commitments or bring them down so we can bring formula funding up. Need to figure out how to adjust the base allocation to make it closer in alignment with the original proportionality of the RSTEP. And then I think there's a lot of support for the one-time funding approach in 2027. So the short answer is we're projecting 4.5 now. I think the direction that we've heard from policy committees, we have to figure out how to grow that over time. That's very important. And so that's really the endeavor that we're going to have to work through over the next year is to figure out what we can do to increase that.
So, Madam Chair, if I could, and I appreciate that, John. There's only a few buckets of money we can look to. I mean, base operations are base means something.
Yeah.
So I mean, that number is that's likely to go up, not down. So we're looking at ADA and regional support services, really only a few places. And then, I mean, we've got Farebox, we've got a few other things, operations here at Valley Metro, how we operate. And we've got the ad hoc business committee looking at procurement and business practices. So and I know we have a lot of work to do. And I appreciate the Band-Aid, but it literally is a Band-Aid. It's not, I mean, our staff is very relieved that we have a way to get through this next budget cycle, but the budget cycle starts, like late summer next year. So there's, 19 municipalities represented here and I know for Glendale, we've got a very robust fixed route system that a lot of people rely on. And so, we're going to need to know as soon as possible where all this stands. And as far as grant funding, I mean, the grant funding is great. And I mean, essentially free money is wonderful, but my personal opinion is using that for operating money is extremely risky.
Yes.
Because it's one-time money. So putting that into your operations, once the grant's over with, it's over with. So that scares me a little bit of saying that that's a bucket of money we could look to for operations. I'm not so fond of that idea myself. So but I appreciate the new partnership and, hopefully the honeymoon will be a lot of fun. Thank you.
Councilmember Davis.
Well, the good thing is I'm an ordained minister, so I can. Testing 1, 2, 3. There we go.
That's good.
I am an ordained minister, so I could perform the wedding right now if we need to.
I don't know.
I'll put my Cher outfit on while I do it. I don't have a Cher outfit. This is a lot to take in. I don't even know where to begin. So I keep hearing a lot of same level of service. We don't even have enough funding to do that. But there's a huge need, particularly in the West Valley, for increased transit. The system is totally not equal across the board. The West Valley has no infrastructure. We have no access to light rail. Phoenix moved some of the priorities around, which means we're not even going to be able to connect to the light rail system in my lifetime at this point. So we really need to look at what we're going to do. We need to figure out how we're going to bring equitable service to the West Valley, right? So starting with Tolleson, right? Tolleson is my city. We have less than 10,000 residents. So I'm hearing you say the formula funds are going to be affected by population density. Is that correct? That's part of it? No.
Madam Chair, members of the board, so formula is calculated every other year based on 2 equally weighted variables, revenue miles and passengers.
Okay, good. That's at least a little better. But as we are the fastest growing region in the country, I think the fastest, if not one of the fastest. And we have major industry coming in like TSMC and other huge, industrial users. How are these people going to get to work? The problem we had in Tolleson, we were able to address on a small scale, but this is a regional problem, right? We have our microtransit system that is working very well for us. That wouldn't work for a bigger city, not at all. But it's also getting way more expensive. We're looking at like doubling the budget at that in the next fiscal year. It's being used, it's great, it's effective for our community, but we need a regional plan for the West Valley, and that's not there. So I would like that to be on a future agenda very soon, so we can really look at what is the plan? How are we gonna make this work for all of our cities? All of them, Tolleson, Avondale, Buckeye, Goodyear, I skipped Goodyear, sorry. All the way up to Surprise. Everyone needs to be connected. As we're growing and our system is not keeping up with pace, and it's ballooning it. And eventually the I-10 can only take so much traffic, and actually it's already at capacity. I hate driving on the I-10. I actually work for the West Valley Arts Council, which is in Surprise. As the Vice Mayor of Tolleson, I live in Tolleson. I hate having to drive there, and I only have to go once a week, and it should only take me 20 to 30 minutes, and it could take me up to an hour, sometimes more than that. I know State Senator Ortiz, I don't know what district she's from, she did a TikTok series where she did a week without a car. I literally could not do that. I could not take a bus to West Valley Arts Council. It's at the Surprise Civic Center. I could not take a bus to get there. I also work in nightlife as a DJ sometimes and a karaoke host, and I would not be able to get to work if I needed to rely on public transportation. I work a lot of times in the Melrose District, and to get to the Melrose District in the middle of the night, how would I get there, right? So people who rely on this system need us to have a plan, and we do not. And it's well past time to come together and figure this out.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Councilmember Pastor?
Yes. I think this intent of this purpose of this meeting is to demonstrate how we need to get along and how MAG and Valley Metro need to come together and work together. I have been in the thick of this thing since maybe July, of really understanding what is happening with Prop 479 dollars. In particular, in the as you saw in January, it was the expansion of the light rail, and so I have a lot of knowledge in that space of the funding and where it's going. I think today is a great testament of showing how you have a whole nother board that needs to, which Jessica has this board that needs to be able to have a seamless relationship in her coming back with the actual knowledge and data to be able to talk to us. I received a PowerPoint that was delivered January 8, 2026 to our intergovernmental staff through MAG. And after that, what was happening is I was hearing from members on Valley Metro, have you seen the PowerPoint? Do you understand what's happening? And it created the sky is falling, which we're seeing it now today, but it created that havoc in January. And we are now here today in February, and deep discussions amongst us, private discussions as to get MAG to Valley Metro to start presenting what they have presented to our intergovs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think really in January, MAG should have shown up as our intergovs were receiving this information, because I think it would have calmed some of the storm that is here today. That's one point. My second point is I believe MAG is doing a West Side study or transit study. I'm not sure what's it called, John?
Madam Chair, members of the board, Councilmember Pastor, it's the I-10 major investment strategy.
So there is a strategy going on that has been passed by MAG. And I think one of what I'm realizing right now as I'm speaking, an aha moment, is that our counterparts that sit on MAG are not talking to the Valley Metro people that don't sit on MAG. And somehow we have to fuse that so that we're aware of what decisions are being made on MAG, so that then that MAG, our counterpart or MAGs are understanding what decisions we're making on Valley Metro. There's a disconnect. And I think it's being seen today. The other piece is Phoenix operates their own bus transit and has their tax. So Phoenix, in a way, is part of this conversation, but not part of this conversation. And it's a big conversation because it'll impact us and it'll impact Valley Metro and everything else and how we do it. But I just want to lay that there because we do depend on certain things from Prop 479, but we also are independent, I guess, as I want to say. We do provide services to other cities. Valley Metro provides their service to the other cities, and that's how it operates right now. So I feel like now we will be doing this regional bus plan. I don't know, I know I'm not calling it correctly, but this will help us as a network and as a region to be able then to see if there's overlap, where the effective routes are, where we need to build, how we need to build, will help. What it sounds like on Prop 479 is that I hear the term incentives. To me, incentives means there are grants or dollars available to incentivize cities to play within the region. And I want to get clarity on that.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I would say that is a relatively fair characterization. It is intended to incentivize service decisions to put the funding where routes are most productive. The local agencies still get the opportunity of ultimately making that choice. So if you focus the scarce resources on the most productive routes, you can expect the highest amount of regional funding to be available.
And then that funding is really what I'll call, I think it's called seed funding, or is that, I don't know.
Formula funding.
Formula funding, I'm looking at my tier. And that eventually those routes would then go into the general budget or the general fund of that city. That's what I'm breaking down.
So Madam Chair, members of the board, so really the challenge is that you have local investment in transit and you have some regional funding, plus you have a region, I think Councilmember, you did a great job of articulating the needs in Tolleson, right? And needs evolve, they grow, they change over time. So we needed a system to be able to evolve, capture, change over time. And the performance-based formula, because it's recalculated every 2 years, does that. So if the warehouse density in Tolleson vastly increases, there's this huge demand for additional bus service. There is a mechanism by which Tolleson can receive regional funds, partner with the region to expand, grow bus service out there. Similarly, if agencies decide, you know what, I have to choose between this route, that route, this can help them in that decision in terms of how much dollars am I going to get back from the region. It really dovetails very nicely into the effort that Valley Metro is leading, the bus network redesign, which is intended, really Valley Metro is going to be the sort of experts at identifying what this underlying network is, where are there opportunities. They're going to be your go-to resource to help inform some of those decisions, and then the regional funding will be available to complement those efforts.
Yeah, if I may, Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to speak after him.
Okay. Yeah, the bus network redesign
I've got Councilmember White, and then who is down there? Davis? Okay, but go ahead.
is really the fantastic opportunity to take both a snapshot of how service should be aligned today with the existing development patterns, as well as we're also looking at where that growth is going to occur in the future. And also taking into account all the city's various plans for their own services, like Phoenix has T2050, et cetera. So the idea is we want to make sure that the network is working now, and then we're identifying those opportunities where that future growth can happen and putting them in a queue for when funding is available to be able to build them.
Madam Chair, may I connect?
Go ahead, finish.
Okay, go ahead.
So on the bus network redesign, I want to relate it back to the base funding. So the base funding, which is the biggest bucket for bus funding, it's not allocated to specific routes or jurisdictions. In other words, it's not specifically allocated to the routes that we have on the ground today. Through the bus network redesign, we'll evaluate the whole system, not just the system, but the service area, and come back through an iterative process and propose changes to that system. So high productivity routes are going to emerge as high priorities in the bus network redesign. So I want to be clear that the base funding and the formula funding, aren't mutually exclusive. So you can have high performing routes, and you're probably going to have high performing routes in the bus network redesign plan that are supported by base funding. And I think maybe we've been drawing too stark a distinction between, we've necessarily distinguished between those buckets, but I want to make that point because I don't think it's come across.
And Councilmember Pastor, I didn't let her finish. So.
No, it's because they were answering.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarity on that, because it's obviously going to be the high performing bus routes. Well, then, at least how I'm looking at it in my head, and you can tell me I'm wrong, is then going to indicate where the possibility of other routes, new routes could go and be high performance or demonstrate performance indicators. I'm going to go to Tolleson because Tolleson is a city that is
The gateway to the West Valley.
right. So I'm going to go to Tolleson. So if our route on our way to Tolleson demonstrates high performance, then at that moment, we can say there's high performance on this route. We know by the performance indicators that this probably would be a new route that we would like to put into either the seed or base, not the base, the formula, whatever tier. And that's how then money is going to be distributed.
Yes, and
throughout the region.
Yeah, it could be a new route, or it could even be an extension of an existing route to move into a place where there's transit demand now, where perhaps there wasn't transit demand 20 years ago when the Prop 400 plan was developed. And I think that's an important point, because in Prop 400, the buckets of funding are divided by jurisdiction, and then there's a sub-regional balance. So it doesn't matter as much now, where that boundary is between Phoenix and your very close neighbor, Tolleson, because you're shared demand.
Because it's becoming a regional, really, truly a regional plan. My last question, ADA routes. I think that's going to be a deep discussion for us, because many people depend on those routes, and I don't see us sunsetting it. So somehow we're going to have to figure that out. That's my last statement. Thank you.
Do you want to comment?
So paratransit service, and I want to distinguish in the graph at the beginning of the presentation today, Ken shared the mix of funding sources. So I want to go back and remind us at the beginning of the conversation, we talked about all of the currently, available funding sources that our PTA currently utilizes today. And some of your cities have other funding for the service that you're directly providing. That's not reflective here. So Prop 400 is the largest revenue stream, but it's not the only revenue stream. As our region continues to grow and we have communities that require fixed route transit and or demand responsive transit, we're also going to have conversations about growing the available revenues. I think there was a slide in the presentation, middle-ish, that looked at our per capita funding for transit in the valley. And we've got a ways to go if we want to create dense transit service. So you're right. This is a conversation we're going to continue to have. It's an important need. I always remind us that our accessible transportation services riders are some of the most vulnerable members of our community. This is a hot button issue. It is not to be taken lightly. We're going to have a lot of discussion on this.
Okay. Councilmember White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mag. Thank you, CEO and fellow board members. As I take a look, I'm back on slide 12, and I think that we're here representing our city, so we think about those interests. But that's the pyramid that we've had quite a lot of discussion from. So I think when we're looking at the emerging markets pilot, we really talked about you know, it might be Tullison, and we might be taking a look at them to see, you know, we're going to have more bus routes out there. When I take a look at what's happening, actually, that's the three, I think, that actually goes down Van Buren. So that's a lot of high volume traffic over there. We already know that. So that's an area where we might need to put some of that seed money. But I'm really concerned as we move to slide number 13. Formula funding circulators. In Avondale, we got rid of our Zoom circulator. So I guess that's the next slide. So that 10% circulator funding, we no longer need that, right? We can't use that funding, from what I understand, how 479 was positioned for now what we want to transition into and what we're already living in. We're living in WeRide now. So I guess I would like to understand, because if we can, I think there was some type of up to 30% of the money that can be used in that space could go to that. Can you talk me through how Avondale could possibly activate those funds? And I'm only being selfish in this moment because that's where I live and that's who I represent.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board, circulators was certainly one of the, I would call it more hot button discussions during plan development and how we should treat it. I think it goes back to what is the role of the regional funding? What should the region be funding? And then what should locals be funding? Acknowledging that the demand for transit greatly exceeds the available revenues. Under Prop 400, funding could only be used for fixed route service. That's where we had sort of initiated development of the plan under those premises. There's a lot of discussion amongst policymakers at TPC about how to handle circulators. Some of the agencies had an interest in the circulator, but it was also acknowledged that circulators play a very different role than fixed route service. And so Armenta somewhat just sort of did a light touch on some of the provisions of circulators, no more than 10%, only 30% of costs. That was really intended to reflect the fact that circulators aren't as productive or sort of core to the regional fixed route service as fixed route service itself. That's a policy that's actually within the RSTIP. So changing that policy would require formal committee action at MAG to do that. But I do anticipate that that will be part of the ongoing conversation, particularly as the formula pot is down to $4.5 million. Do we really want to allocate a portion of that $4.5 million to circulators? Because as you noted, the world in 2025 is a lot different than the world in 2019. Circulators aren't as big of an emphasis point. And so certainly that I anticipate that to be part of the discussion.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that clarity there. I did have a few more concerns and comments as we go on. I know that we also talked about you know, updating estimates, and the CEO generously shared that we will have access to grant funding. We've had applications out there already, but can you give me some guidance on how will what the federal government is doing impact us? More specifically, the reauthorization of IIJA, the $1.2 trillion that's set to expire in September of this year, and then the BASIC Act that's out there right now that's being circulated. I can get you the bill number before we go, but can you give us some geopolitical influence here and how we might get those other funds?
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board. So just from a high level perspective, so as you look at the regional plan, all the funding sources are intertwined with each other, which is part of the reason why the life cycle programs were consolidated at MAG. And so while we talk a lot about the dedicated half cent sales tax for transportation, there's a significant amount of federal formula funds that flow into the regional plan. So in fact, just for perspective, about 40% of the region's overall plan is from federal formula funds. And so a lot of those funds, we have those allocated to support the bus capital program. We have those allocated to support the high capacity transit program. A portion of those flow into what we call preventative maintenance, which helps overall service costs. So depending on what the conversation is at Washington, D.C., that could have very significant impacts on this region, depending on the direction they go. Certainly from a funding level perspective, we would hope to see funding levels consistent, equal to or higher than IIJA. If we see the federal government pass a bill that's significantly lower than the IIJA, the financial situation in the TLCP and all our life cycle programs for that matter will be even more dire than it is today. And so that certainly will present a challenge. I think the availability of federal discretionary grants is really important. I think Jessica is well equipped to speak to the importance of the CIG program and certainly delivering some of these big investments. But you know, while it's Washington, D.C. is miles away, what they do truly has an impact on what we do here regionally.
I would just add, members of the board, the Valley Metro's federal lobbying agenda was previewed in our January board meeting, I believe, and that lobbying agenda, as well as quick glossy one-pagers, was included in your packet. It was also shared with your intergovernmental staff, and preservation of the formula funding programs is one of the pillars of our federal lobbying effort. We're actually asking that those programs, like the SIG, be indexed to inflation as well, so that it grows over time, because it's a critical source of funds. And particularly that bus capital fund, that we're assuming typically 80% federal match on bus capital. So only 20% of the cost is built in to that bus capital bucket. So if the federal participation rate decline, that's going to increase our local obligation rate. And that's why we are hitting that so very hard. We're going to continue to have conversations as well as work to arrange a delegation from this board to visit with our congressional delegation in Washington, D.C., and an opportunity to visit with them while they are here in district in the Valley. So it's a big deal, a lot of uncertainty, but we do remain optimistic relative to the budgets that have been put out. And we'll keep coming with updates to the board via email on this too.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, I think I was next anyway, so.
Go ahead, the chair recognizes Councilmember Davis.
I would be interested in knowing who is part of this I-10 plan, who's represented.
Sure. Madam Chair, members of the board. So it's a future study. So the study has not yet kicked off. We are in the early planning process. Certainly Tolleson will be engaged and will be a partner. The study limits go from essentially downtown Phoenix all the way out to Loop 303, intended to identify solutions to some of those really great traffic problems you identified on I-10. But certainly as our region develops, as we look forward, solutions aren't just going to be freeway oriented or roadway oriented. We're going to have to look at a suite of multimodal solutions. And so the study is intended to do just that in a comprehensive manner. Valley Metro is a partner, will be a close partner. The jurisdictions along the boundaries will. It's a study that hasn't kicked off yet, though.
Okay. All right. I'm glad it hasn't kicked off yet, because hold on. I'm not done. I've got some more to say. So one of the things that I was going to mention is that I do not believe that bus is going to be the answer, or bus exclusively. We're going to have to look at very creative options, like maybe even, railways. There's definitely lots of railways around our communities. And, Max alluded to it, we got rid of our circulator bus system because it was really expensive and no one used it. And we are still spending actually less on our micro transit system than we would have spent on the circulator bus. So with that being said, I would really be interested in being able to use some of the circulator funds to fund our micro transit system, which is way better than Rewrite, 24-hour curb to curb service. All right, let's talk about that. And then the other thing that I want to say is, I'm sorry, that's on the record. Look at the numbers. But I'm a firm believer if you do not have a seat at the table, that you're on the menu. And Tolleson does not have representation on the transit board at MAG. And I talked a lot about equity when I was speaking earlier, and I think all of the member cities should have representation on that board.
Well put. Who's up next?
That was Madam Chairman.
Yes,
I'd just like to tag on to what
Councilmember Davis.
Councilmember Davis just said.
I'm the vice mayor for the record.
You vice
Vice
mayor?
Mayor.
Vice Mayor, we're sorry.
Sorry.
It's really important to see the West Valley as a whole and not just I-10 adjacent cities. Because I'm in El Mirage, Vice Mayor from Surprises. We should be part of those conversations too. Me, not so much, because whatever happens to Surprise is probably going to benefit us. But definitely, you know, these blowing up cities like Surprise need to be in this conversation as well, not just the I-10 adjacent cities.
Madam Chair, members of the board, so just a couple points I want to make. You know, I certainly, MAG welcomes all participation from all member agencies. Every member agency has a seat on the MAG Regional Council. And then just the other item I want to note, Transportation Policy Committee is identified as part of state statute as the committee responsible for developing and implementing the plan. So it's a construct of state statute. So I just want to provide that clarification.
Councilmember Max White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My apologies, Vice Mayor, for the incorrection there. But I think that he made a comment, Vice Mayor Davis did, about being able to get out, and you're talking about setting up a cohort to make it go out to the 303. But I just want to also echo, I know we have on the line Mayor Bratcher. She is not on the I-10 corridor. I know we have on the line our Goodyear representation in Buckeye. And I've talked to so many people out in Buckeye, and they've asked us to stop cutting off our imagination at the 303 and go all the way out to 85. I mean, we really have population boom out in Buckeye. It's booming out in Buckeye. And, you know, I just really would hate to ignore our partners and our friends just by stopping at the 303 and not having that innovation. And I also want to speak to the fact that separate conversation as it relates to Transportation Policy Committee. I'm very honored that I have the opportunity to serve there, but the legislature, I think, actually has specific constructs for the members that are on that committee. And maybe we need to shout our voices a little bit louder, because I know they added a bunch of, I'm not sure, maybe you could speak to how many new members the legislature have added in their functionality when they are not representing municipal government. Can you share that with this team? Because again, this is just, you know, that shotgun wedding. We just want to make sure we put everything on the table.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. So TPZ is a public-private partnership. So there are identified member agency seats that are, the number of those seats is specified by state legislation. There are a number of legislatively appointed board seats, some with different interests. There's a transit representative, somebody appointed to represent transit interests, as an example, residential construction interests. Most recently, as part of the legislation to enable a vote on Prop 400, there was an increase in the number of legislative appointment seats. I think a total of 6 additional seats were added, some of whom represent unincorporated Maricopa County, some of whom represent residential housing construction. Taxpayer interests is another seat. And then the governor also has a seat, appointed seat, to represent resiliency interests.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Odin Harris.
And thank you so much. I was so traumatized by all the West Valley shout outs. I didn't know what to do back here in the East Valley. But there are issues in the East Valley. I know the chair probably shared the same sentiments with me, as she represents Tempe. There's Tempe, Chandler, Gilbert, Mesa. I mean, we go north, we got Scottsdale in there, and if we continue to go east, we got Queen Creek. And there's a need for that subtle buildup. And if they're doing a real study that really is going to impact West Valley, the East Valley region needs to be really very much a part of that conversation, because really what we're talking about is connectivity to communities. They want to continue to expand their economic development, because when transportation is solidly put in place, they're able to really connect the dots for the West Valley. As we are in the East Valley, we want those dots to be connected. Transportation may be scarce in some areas, but the formula model that you continue to use may not work for our area in where we are right now. It may work sometimes better in the West in some aspects because there may be more density. There may be more people living out there. I don't spend time in the West, so I would just depend on my colleagues to speak intelligent to that. But in the East Valley, there is a great fall off that does happen. We did we had got Flex. We did Flex Transit, which is kind of like Tempe's Orbit, and we do that, but we do it for a small area. We originally got the $1 million grant from these organizations, and then all of a sudden, it no longer, that funding ran out, and so Congressman Greg Stanton furthered that funding and gave us another $1 million got us another $1 million from the federal government, which collectively, to what my colleagues were saying, how are we working with the federal partners in terms of our direct elected leaders like Congressman Stanton, Senator Gallego, Senator Kelly, like how we're maneuvering? Because I know we're going to DC to talk, to advocate, but how are we using those to our benefits outside of their bill-making process? So I just...
Madam Chair, members of the board, I think Jessica did a good job of speaking to Valley Metro efforts. MAG has similar efforts where we consistently engage our congressional delegation, provide them information, talk about the importance of funding. So that certainly continues to be an ongoing conversation and really highlighting its importance. So
our federal funding is typically, Madam Chair, members of the board, it's typically capital funding, one-time purchases. We do occasionally receive funding that is eligible for operating costs. For instance, last month I shared news of the federally directed funding to support the Valley Metro safety program, where we would be having street level outreach and social service workers aboard light rail. But that's pilot funding. We expect to spend that funding down within 3 years, at which time we would have to sunset or scale the program down or discontinue the program or support it with local revenue. So transit across the board, it's funded, the operations, and that's our biggest cost, is funded locally.
And I guess my last question that I have, and I'll land the plane there, was that the last question that I have is to make sure that we can.
Here's you.
I wanted to know, like, are they going to do a study in the far East Valley with the various connecting cities in the East Valley as they're seeking to do in the West Valley?
Madam Chair, members of the board, so Valley Metro is doing the bus network redesign, which is that overall inclusive sort of transit oriented study. MAG does a lot of multimodal studies. I didn't mention some of the other ones we're doing. Certainly, if you ever have a question on sort of the more comprehensive multimodal long range, you can work with your staff, and we're happy to go out and discuss. But I think for purposes of transit, really Valley Metro's bus network redesign is really where the focus is.
Madam Chair,
Thank you.
Yes.
is it possible to have 2 more questions and then close this portion of our meeting, because there are some members that have to leave and we have to vote?
Yes.
So
And,
that's, I'm just asking.
okay, we'll have 2 more questions. Councilmember.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While I can appreciate the excitement about expanding our reach in the East Valley, West Valley, the reality is there's about $900,000 to do that where we sit right now. So we've got a lot of work to do before we even start those. I mean, I understand the studies are happening and that's going to be part of the bus network redesign, but based on where the formula funding sits right now, $900,000 is not going to get it done. And we have a lot, a collective group, we have a lot of work to do before we can start figuring out how we're going to reach more people with transit. That being said, what is the local match requirement in order to get a pilot? I believe there's a local match requirement in our step for this. So just if you could quickly go through that.
So Madam Chair, members of the board, so just for the emerging markets portion, which is the let's submit an application, go through a process for expanded transit. There's a tiered, if Michael can switch to that slide. So it's 90% regional in the first year, 10% local, and it tailors down to ensure that there is local funding commitment for that expansion. And then when it's done, based on how the route performs, decision will be made and it goes into the formula program.
Thank you.
Councilmember Edwards.
No, I have nothing.
I think that's.
All right, I think that's a wrap. So I appreciate you're coming and presenting to us, just for the record, Tempe's formula funding for high-performance transit routes remains a high priority in Tempe. It is imperative and that regional costs are contained. These have increased significantly from original assumptions. This further reduces performance-based formula funding. And with that, we are adjourned.
We have time to run a restroom.
Yes. Take a 5-minute break.
John, that's right, you're leaving right now before the meeting.
I have 2:00 hard meeting that I gotta be back in.
Well, we have till 1:30, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, run to the bathroom and then we can get through this one. This
Go
one's
ahead and
quick.
start without me.
This one's quick.
As long as nobody keeps talking.
Meeting agendas. Up to 3 minutes will be provided per speaker unless the chair allows more at their discretion. A total of 15 minutes for all speakers will be provided.
Before we do that, we have to run roll.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you for.
City of Avondale, Councilmember White.
Present.
City of Buckeye, Councilmember Barry. All right. City of Chandler, Councilmember Harris. Okay. City of El Mirage, Councilmember Dorsey.
Present.
Town of Fountain Hills, Peggy McMahon.
I didn't even get my iPad on the internet anymore. So I have to
Town of Gilbert, Councilmember Buckland.
connect.
City of Glendale,
Here.
Councilmember Tomachoff. Here. City of Goodyear, Councilmember Campbell. Yep, thank you. Maricopa County Supervisor Gallardo. Okay, this is not opening. City of Mesa, Councilmember Herrera. Okay.
City of Peoria, Councilmember Edwards. City of Phoenix, Councilmember Pastor.
Present.
Town of Queen Creek, Councilmember Brown.
I'm here.
City of Scottsdale, Councilmember McAllen.
Present.
City of Surprise, Vice Mayor Greenberg. City of Tempe, Councilmember Adams. City of Tolleson, Vice Mayor Davis.
Present.
Town of Wickenburg, Mayor Bratcher.
Present.
And Town of Youngberg, Mayor Lavalde.
Yeah, I'm here. It's Youngtown, by the way. Thanks.
Thank you. All right.
Very much. Do we have any public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on. Jessica, would you like to do a quick executive officer's report?
I will, thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, as I mentioned in our prior study session, Valley Metro this month is submitting a build grant application. This would support implementation of some of the recommendations from the recent crime prevention through environmental design and collision reduction and runtime studies. Both of them focused on the rail system, and the overall goal is to increase the safety, the speed, and the reliability of our rail system, which of course operates in a shared right-of-way. If successful, investments will include replacement of blank out signage, introduction of AI technology that helps detect intrusions on the track and informs operators, second entrances at some of our rail stations to control access and egress. If we're not successful, we'll continue pursuing other federal funding to support these important upgrades to our existing rail system. We talked a lot about bus network redesign in our last conversation. I want to mention that we are engaging very deeply with our community on the bus network redesign, which is tagged Your Voice, Your Ride. This is the people's system, and we've got to hear from them what's working, what's not working. To date, we've received over 4,500 responses to surveys. We've engaged with almost 200 businesses or not-for-profit entities. We've conducted over 50 meetings. We are often co-locating meetings with pop-ups and other events that are happening in the community. And this is one part of Valley Metro's comprehensive community engagement strategy. We did present that new strategy to this body last year. I think it's going really well, and we're getting that important participation that's so necessary from the community. System performance, ridership is continuing to grow. If we look at our most recent month, which was December, bus ridership was fairly flat. Light rail ridership each month continues to grow. In December, it was 28% year over year relative to the prior year. I do want to note most of this ridership growth on light rail is on the South Central extension, which opened in June of 2025. We are seeing a decline on streetcar. I want to remind us that we began collecting fares for the first time in August 2025 on streetcar. So we're working with Tempe and our pass partners, including Arizona State University, to get more passes in the hands of people who would be likely streetcar riders. On the bus side of things, we're continuing to push improvements in service quality and reliability. That means the bus is so much more likely to show up where we say, when we say it's going to, than it has in the past. And these are performance improvements relative to the same quarter last year across each of our day types. So well done to the transportation and service planning teams. I know you are all aware of this, and I did send a detailed email out to this body the early morning of January 28th, when Phoenix City Council voted to reprioritize light rail projects for expansion. At this time, we're working with City of Phoenix to evaluate additional high capacity or different high capacity transit option, ideally along Indian School Road. We are working now to create a plan for advancing planning, preliminary engineering, also conducting engagement with a very active and engaged and dense business community along Indian School Road. I want to express my gratitude to our partners at City of Phoenix, the hardworking Valley Metro staff, and our contract partners who did yeoman's work working to present options for mayor and council's consideration for either advancing capital extension or exploring another option. It's been almost 8 months since we opened South Central Extension, and what a glorious day that was. And this project, like the other projects we have opened recently, is very quickly racking up accolades. I want to congratulate our marketing and communications team led by Chief Hillary Foose for their award as a first place winner in the American Public Transit Association AdWheel Grand Awards. AdWheels are a big deal in our industry, at the risk of sounding nerdy. This is a big deal, and it is for the communications, marketing, and customer experience campaign leading up to the grand opening of the South Central Extension. Hillary and team, well done.
Congratulations. All right.
Kind of like a Heisman of transit. South Central Extension this spring will also receive the Women's Transportation Seminar Award for Transportation Solutions at their annual Scholarship and Awards Gala. Looking ahead, we do have next week on Wednesday, a meeting of our ad hoc committee chaired by Councilmember Tolmachoff, where we are focused on procurement practices and business strategies. I do want to note that our March meeting, which is March 26th, it's been pushed back a week to accommodate board member attendance at League of Cities and Towns. We're also starting at 11:30 instead of 11:15. We'll be back on our normal schedule in the month of April. That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Councilmember White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Audit and Finance Subcommittee met Thursday, February 5th. We received an update with our financial officer from Mr. Kessler. I believe we had our revenue dollars through the end of December. We received we approved actually the internal audit charter update. Ms. Beckstrom presented that with her internal audit strategic vision. And then we also took a deep dive into a new method of operations here. She has an internal audit strategic vision planned out from 2026 through 2029. So that was presented and approved during our Audit and Finance Subcommittee meeting. Mr. Conrad, our internal audit manager, he provided us with an update on internal audit, external reviews, and prior audit findings. And then Mr. Olson, our budget and operations financial manager, provided the FY26 second quarter budget review. We then had Mr. Kessler present to us the VMR fiscal year 2026 mid-year budget adjustments. And then we took a look at Valley, the fiscal year 2027 preliminary transit service budget assumptions. We had the opportunity to review fiscal year 2025 Regional Public Transit Authority and Valley Metro Rail comprehensive financial reports and single audit reporting packages for acceptance. And I believe we had no findings. I can be corrected if I'm wrong, though Mr. Kessler is shaking his head. I do want to commend the team in audit finance and also our budget team. There were no findings, so excellent job. And then just for the remainder of the board, please take a look at intergovernmental agreements, contract change orders, amendments, and awards. And if there's any questions, please engage with our Valley Metro staff to get that information. We had no updates on current events or suggested future agenda items, and AFS will meet again on Thursday, March 5th at noon. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Appreciate it. 4A and 4B are presented for action. I would like to combine those in the interest of time. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All
Aye.
opposed? Okay, motion carries. And next, I would like to, since the other ones are just for information, travel and expenditures, report on current events and suggested future items. I do have a future item. It's the Ennings Festival. It is the next 2 weeks in Tempe, so it'll be really crowded. Oh, there it is. And so just keep that in mind. Please ride light rail or buses if you can. Next meeting will be Thursday, March 26th.
Madam Chair, I have
Oh.
a future.
Couple of other
Oh,
items.
oh,
future agenda.
okay.
Other
I'm sorry.
items. So Councilmember Harris.
Yes, thank you. We had opportunity to connect with Valley Metro where we had various people from throughout the community Arizona came together. Valley Metro provided a sponsorship for the bus where we did tours of historic areas that was located within Phoenix during the Black History Month. We can't move forward without connecting to our history, and we were able to see some historical sites, as well as Senator Gallego's team was a part of this ride as well. So it was really cool, good regional effort for us to stay connected, and the public was invited and many came. And as you can see, we had kids on the bus riding around. So it was really awesome. And thank you to CEO and your team for doing an outstanding job on making it happen. So thank you so much. It was awesome.
Excellent. Councilmember Tomachov?
Thank you. I've got a couple things. The Joint Board Procurement Business Practices and Ad Hoc Subcommittee met on January 16th. At that meeting, we basically just went through our work plan. There was a consensus to adopt the work plan. So we haven't really done any work yet. And our next meeting will be next week, February 25th at what time? At 11 a.m. I do have a couple future agenda items to bring back a discussion at the March 20, whatever that meeting is, the 26th meeting, to have a discussion whether or not we feel that it's appropriate to leave placeholders in the budget, but have a hiring freeze until we figure out how this formula funding thing is going to work. So I'd at least like to have a board discussion about whether we want to talk about that and then where the board leaves that. And then one other thing, the study session, I'd like to adopt the board to discuss adopting a study session policy. I personally do not like showing up unprepared and not having a chance to review, especially when you call it a study session and I haven't had a chance to study it.
Yeah.
I'd like to have the board talk about adopting a policy on at least whatever we decide, providing this material to us in advance so we can show up prepared. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You bet. So we'll put that on the future agenda.
Yes,
item.
please.
Any other announcements? The prize?
I think Councilmember Greenberg departed.
Okay. And let's see where we are. Councilmember Davis, Vice Mayor Davis, President of America Davis.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna lose myself right now. I would like to request an item placed on a future agenda, looking at what the plan is for the Southwest Valley and the West Valley in general with transit. Sounds like there's a lot of different things that are happening in different areas. I don't know what I don't know, and I don't like that. I would like to be informed. I need to be informed to represent my community effectively. So I would like that to be on a future agenda, like.
And March 26th?
This vote that Phoenix just took, which could potentially affect my community, you guys are your own entity, you're gonna do what you're gonna do. But the only reason I even knew that was happening is because of Laura's efforts on social media. Otherwise, I would have probably not known until the vote came out and it was on the news. So I had a little bit of a heads up and I was trying to figure out what's happening here. So yeah, I think communication is key to making sure we are successful board members, and that includes getting stuff in advance. So I will say thank you to the Valley Metro team because they have fulfilled a lot of my requests lately with meetings and just getting me additional information that I've asked for. So I do appreciate that. Thank you, Jessica, and your team.
Madam Chair, we do have a study session planned for the spring on the bus network redesign. Perhaps that would be the time where we can highlight not just Southwest Valley, but all of our subregions, what we're seeing. And this is intended to get board member reaction. We'll have similar conversations with city staff.
Okay. Yeah, I think one of the things that doesn't work with our system is we don't work as a region, we work as individual entities, and we need to really fix that. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have current events or suggested future agenda items? Yes. Councilmember White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to share that I am a member of the Friends of the Southwest Family Advocacy Center board member, and we are going to be hosting our Spirit of Strength Gala on Friday, March 6th from 5 to 10 p.m. at the Wigwam Resort in Litchfield Park, Arizona. I will go ahead and send out information to share with the board to make sure that you all have the data, but that's an awesome opportunity for multiple governments to come through and support the victims of domestic violence and human trafficking and participate. So I would invite you all to join me. Thank you so much, Chair.
Very, very good. Anyone else? All right, so our next meeting will be Thursday, March 26th. You said at 11:30, correct? 11:30. I'll start 11:30. Okay, meeting adjourned.
Okay, let's do one more.
Okay.
Like purple and I drove.
I know, but I wanna see if we can get out of here by 1:30. 5 minutes. So, no talking.
No talking. Spoken like a teacher. Okay,
Can we take roll call real fast?
yes, a roll call, please. Do we need to do?
I don't think we have to do it again.
Meeting, are we going?
No? We don't have to do it.
RPTA.
Oh, we don't have to do roll call again. Okay, okay,
So let's do the consent agenda.
yes.
Any public comments?
Okay. Do we have any public comments at this time? Seeing none? Good move.
Then at this time.
Okay, consent items. We can read. They're here. I'm ready for this.
Okay.
We can't rush through the comprehensive operational elements bus.
No, but we gotta get some people.
Okay, yeah.
Are we gonna approve this consent agenda?
Second. Yeah, I move consent agenda item 1A, 1B.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Say aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Would you like to start?
Absolutely. Good morning, Chair Adams and members of the board. I'm Michael Ushman, Deputy Chief of Service Planning, and I will skip to the recommendation.
Thank you.
We are requesting authorization from the Board of Directors, the recommendation to authorize the CEO to execute a contract amendment with TMD to extend the contract through February 28th, 2027, and increase the aggregate value of the contract to a not to exceed amount of $899,633.
Do I have a motion?
I move item number 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 3 is for information.
Okay, item 3 is for information only, so I think we will pass on that
I
today.
reported on that, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Councilmember White has already reported on that. Okay, current events and suggested future agenda items. Yes? Councilmember White.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to pause and also thank Councilmember Harris from the city of Chandler. I don't think folks, he kind of breezed past it, but the government, the Arizona Governor's Office of African American Affairs hosted African American Legislative Days. I just wanted to publicly thank Valley Metro for being a sponsor of the African American Legislative Days, which included that amazing bus tour through South Phoenix that Councilmember Harris shared with us. I do want to acknowledge Black History Month again by sharing some of my favorite African Americans historically who have done things in transit. As a Northeast Ohio native, I'm always super proud of Garrett Morgan, who invented a traffic control device. And then a lot of folks don't realize Lois Cooper made history becoming the first African American woman in the California Department of Transportation. And if anybody takes an HOV lane, please think about Lois Cooper. It is her that came up with the idea to have diamond lanes. And now those diamond lanes helped improve traffic on the freeways out in California, and now we use them as the HOV symbol, I almost think internationally. And then she worked on major projects out there like the I-105 Century Freeway, the San Diego Freeway. So a lot of really awesome folks. And then the final Black History fact that I think that we can share and be excited about was Dr. Gladys West pioneered mathematician here in the United States, also a part of the Naval Surface Warfare Center in Dahlgren, Virginia. She was instrumental in developing the satellite geodesy models that made up, and she was a strong part of the team that helped us with GPS, so GPS systems. And so a lot of folks don't realize some of the great contributions that were made by African Americans. I don't think Dr. West would have ever called that her own. That was something that the federal government was working on, but we can serve as strong members of the team, and I'm very proud to share that as a part of our Black History Month. Thank you so much, Chair.
You're welcome. Yes. Bodie?
Yep, in conjunction with Councilmember Max White, we kind of talked about this and pre-planned to make sure that we do Black History. We want to acknowledge Black History Month. We want to acknowledge transportation. So the two people that I wanted to bring to the table was Elijah McCoy, 1887. He revolutionized the railroad industry with the automatic lubrication system, which allows trains to run longer and efficiently without stopping. Many of the engineers may know this as the real McCoy, to ensure that we were getting the authentic, making sure that we get from place to place. But that's where the real McCoy came from, and that allowed trains to go a little bit further. And then one of the other most powerful ones that many of us know in Black history is Rosa Parks, whose refusal to give up her seat in 1955 was not just about a bus. It sparked a Montgomery bus boycott and reshaped public transportation policy across the nation, became a defining moment in the civil rights movement, which allows basically everyone here to get on the bus in a more inclusive way. And that's why we have ADA, Paris Transit, and all these different types of offsets of policies that was based on the idea of we need to make sure everyone's able to ride free, safe, and secure to get to their destination. So thank you, Madam Chair. That's all the Black History. Happy Black History Month to everyone. And those are my Black History notes for transportation. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments? Okay, with that silence, we are adjourned. Thank you. Great job. Thanks. Thanks. Okay. Roll it.
Thank you. I will, hello and welcome members. I think it's just you and I to the February Valley Metro RPTA Board meeting. Item number 1 is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is presented for action. Does the committee have any questions or do any items need to be pulled for separate discussion?
No items.
Okay, can I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Wait, you're the president.
Okay.
Oh, good. I don't.
Item number 2 is the Valley Metro Rail fiscal year 2026 mid-year budget adjustment. Ken, can we get through this quickly?
You bet. I could do like Michael did. I'll just roll forward to the recommendation slide and see if you have any questions.
All right. Do we have any questions? It's between you and me.
Motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those not in favor, please say nay. Motion carries. Item number 3. Fiscal year 2025, RPTA Annual Comprehensive Financial Report and Single Audit Reporting Package. Jessica Miller will now introduce this item.
Madam Chair, this item is being presented for information by Chief Financial Officer. So would you like a presentation?
No, thank you. Would you like a presentation?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Item 4 is also report on current events and suggested future agenda items. Do you have any?
No, I have none.
I have none. So, current items. Now, item number 5, next meeting. The next meeting of the RPTA board is scheduled for Thursday, March 26th at 2026 at 11:30 a.m. Thank you for joining me. Meeting adjourned. I'm done. I'm done with all these presentations. Oh, shit. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, well, at least you'll get energy.
Yeah, that's true.
Nice job.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
Can you disconnect the WebEx?
I'll be there.